Assalamu alaikum and greetings. My name is Shwa and I'm the host and founder of a podcast called Light Up with Shwa. It's a weekly podcast on conscious living and parenting. I have a very special guest, a young guest with me today, whom I have been meaning to interview since last year. And I'm very happy that he is available today. Please, Javed, can you introduce yourself with your full name and who you are and what do you do?
Thank you so much, Shua. My name is Javed Hashmi. At night, I'm a physician, so that's my night job. But my full-time day job, you can say, is I'm a PhD candidate in the study of religion at Harvard University, where I specialize in Islamic Studies.
Okay.
So I initially trained as a physician, but my real passion and what I went down the path of another path, which was the study of religion. So I do have a bachelor's and master's both in Arabic and Islamic studies, and now I'm in the middle of my PhD as well.
So you did in parallel while you were doing your medical school, like you have bachelor's in another area. Oh, wow. When did you get the time to do all that? And I don't think you're that old.
It's a long story.
Okay.
And a very circuitous route. I mean, I got my degrees not in the traditional order even, but bottom line is that eventually I realized that if I wanted to do this seriously, I did need to go back to complete that bachelor's degree, master's degree, and the PhD to do all three of those. Before all that, I did do, at the very start of this kind of transition, I did a fellowship in medical ethics with an interest in Islamic bioethics. But I realized that unless I went all in, I would not truly understand these topics, and I would only have a surface level understanding. So that's what compelled me to just go all the way.
Okay.
So
very good. So you went all the way into medical field, which is as an MD.
Yes.
Is that like a general physician?
So I'm an emergency physician, which is a generalist, you can say. We bill as a specialist, but
emergency.
Emergencies. You are expect to see whatever walks through the door. So in that way, I would say that I'm definitely what do they say? A jack of all trades, master of none. That's really what an ER doc is.
Okay. All right. Okay. So while you are on this topic, instead of going to parenting first, let's talk about why Islamic studies, why religion. What can you say about it?
Well, what I would say is that I have always been interested in the humanities, history, religion, politics, anything really humanities related. Ever since I was a child, I've been interested in. But I think due to kind of cultural pressures, being South Asian, being of Pakistani ethnicity, we really only had two choices in life: be a
engineer.
Now opened up the street. It's really either medicine or engineering. And in fact, I did study engineering for 2 years.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow.
I did. Yeah. So I've done it. So I did engineering for 2 years. I realized it wasn't for me. I switched to the other option then, which was medicine. I quickly realized that it's not of my interest either, but now I'd already switched. And so I said, you know what, it's too much of a sunk cost now.
Wow.
So whether or not that's a correct way to think is a different story. But so I did medicine really out of obligation, cultural kind of pressure, not really direct parental pressure. They didn't force me to do anything.
Yeah. Nice boy, huh? Nice son. Not blaming your parents.
No, I'm not blaming them.
I know.
Although there are, in retrospect, things that I now realize, and that's in hindsight, that there are certain things I think parents need to do that maybe, in a Pakistani culture is not common to do. And so, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about you grew up here. Were you born in the U.S.?
I was born in the U.S. I was born in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, California.
Okay. So you have been also in United States all over, to East Coast to West, from East Coast to West Coast. Okay. Go ahead, please.
So yes, I did grow up in the United States. And so as far as parenting is concerned, I mean, I'm not a parent, so it can sometimes come across as presumptuous for me to give any parenting advice. But
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. You go ahead, please.
So where I would say that I would want to give input is exactly on this, which is career, as far as children are concerned. So what I think is important for us to do, and there are certain sociological reasons we can say why this isn't the case in traditional Pakistani families or traditional Asian families, and why it's the case in the United States. If you grow up as just an average, say, white kid living in the suburb, all of the opportunities are open to you to study. Whereas if you're a Pakistani child or an Asian child growing up to immigrant parents, why they're kind of constraining your options to just a couple options. So there's certain sociological reasons we can talk about. But what I would say is that in the West, especially in the United States, we have all of these opportunities available to us. And now I do see that the younger generations of Muslims, Pakistanis, are branching out and they're studying all sorts of things. But back when I graduated high school all the way back in 2000, that really, it wasn't obvious to me at that time that you had those options. So what that has resulted in is that I would say of my siblings, we're all doctors.
Oh,
and
really? Wow.
Three of us.
Okay. Well.
I would say two out of the three probably are not happy in their career.
Okay.
And
Can I ask you, brothers, sisters, three brothers?
two sisters.
Two sisters, and
Sisters.
you are the only brother?
I'm the only brother.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. The spoiled one? From Pakistani community? Oh, my God.
Maybe they would say so. I don't know about that.
Okay.
But,
Okay. They can tell me more.
yeah, they can tell you more about that. But yes, and so my elder sister, her name is Sarah Dean.
Okay.
She's also involved. She's involved in interfaith dialogue, and she's very active in the Muslim community of her area. So both of us had these other interests outside of medicine or dentistry. In her case, dentistry. So you have it's a very strange thing. My mom jokes around that she spent so much effort producing these doctors, and now they're not even working to the fullest capacity to just earn those bucks.
Yeah.
This has a certain financial cost. What I'm doing, right? I'm losing hundreds of thousands of dollars by switching the line that I'm going into.
Right.
But that's why I think it's important that as a parent at a very young age, instead of a one-way, you do this, you do that, where the parent kind of tells the child what to do. Even at a young age in our culture, it's common to say, "Acha beta, doctor banoge." You're going to become a doctor when you grow up, or tell them at a very young age what they need to become. I think that's a very bad way of doing it, because we were all created with a certain nature, certain internal disposition, certain interests, and it's impossible to change those. So when I was in third grade, I remember I was good at math. I was good at science. That's an obligation as an Asian Pakistani to be good at those things. But I never had an interest in any of that. And you would find me in the library. Sometimes I'd blow off doing my homework, and I'd just be in the library reading books from the history aisle that probably not many other children would read books from that. So that was my interest back then, and my interest now is almost exactly the same.
So what is the age group we are talking here?
I think at a very young age, parents. I mean, this is just my.
What was your age that you would say that you were already reading history books?
Well, what I could say is as early as I can remember.
Okay, which
I've
is
always
maybe middle
had-
school, high school?
I would say definitely in elementary school already.
Oh, that early.
Yes.
Okay.
By elementary school, and like I said, as early as I can remember,
Okay.
I've had certain inclinations and interests,
Mhm.
and I think that's why it's important for parents to keep their eyes open and look for what does this child, what are their interests, and how do I nurture these interests so that they can develop these further and see if this might be what the child goes on to do as an adult. So, if they have an interest in sometimes it seems like a joke. This child has an interest in dinosaurs, say. Now, most children do, but one or two of them is going to end up to become a paleontologist. So it is important to keep eyes open, see what the child is interested in. And then the other thing that I would say is as they grow, as they enter into junior high and high school, at this point in time, I'm not saying that the parents should be completely passive and just say, do whatever you want.
Right.
I think the parent should very much be active, but it's kind of like an active listening and a counseling and a guidance. So it's very crazy to me that so I married when I married my wife, she was fairly young. She was still an undergrad, and because we got married, she had to move and restart everything, and it was a long process for her. But when we went back into school at that point in time, I was thinking to myself, I was like, this is a big financial responsibility to go back to school. So let's think about this deeply. What do you want to do, and what do you think you'll be good at, etc. And then in that process, I just thought about it, how little, our parents' generation in general had these kind of conversations with us. And I think the communication was already so one way that at that time, I know that as a child, I wouldn't have been able. I do remember my father, he did say, look, it seems like you have history as an interest. You should pursue that. And at that time, I was an engineering student, and he is also an engineer. In my mind, I had thought, if I go down this path of history, I'll be a failure in his eyes and my parents' eyes. Even though he's saying do what you want, I had interpreted in my young mind at 18, 19 years old that science and engineering, that's the real stuff. And history is kind of fluff, not hard science. So I don't want to just do fluff. And this kind of idea, this kind of valorization that we have in our community of just these technical fields, and by this engineering and medicine, and maybe now lawyer is coming into it. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that we need to push back against, because if we just produce doctors and engineers, who are going to be the people who, do our philosophizing, who do our social work, who do our journalism, who do all of these things, and to say that it's okay to do these things, and that these things on the highest level. So now I've done medicine, I've done engineering a little bit, and I've done humanities. And I would say that humanities on the highest level, I think we're probably in some ways the most difficult, in the sense of if you really want to excel, it takes a lot to do it. It sometimes feels like you have to read an infinite amount of books. You see a lot of books in the background. Mm-hmm. It's just the start. I mean, it just feels like there's just so much learning. So I guess I'm making two unrelated or somewhat related points here. Number one is that we kind of look to see what our children want to do, what they're good at, and promote that. And then the second thing is that we don't just focus on a couple technical fields, and instead branch out and see what are the other possibilities. And that's how we're going to become a diverse community that is actually making an impact in the world. Because it's often the case that engineers and doctors are so busy in their lives that they're really not contributing. That's not always the case. But so that's why I think it's important to nurture this next generation to go on and do all sorts of things, whether that's being a musician, an artist, a journalist, working in a human rights organization, a lawyer.
Anthropology is
all of these
history,
things.
Journalism, very much. I have so many subjects that I can mention, or the career paths. So anyways, that's very good. Yeah, you're right. I agree.
Recommend.
Yeah. Can you say something about, to address the younger generation, let's say they can respect their parents and all, but to give them some tips and skills that how can they manage or balance or push back respectfully their parents? Can you help there with that, because you have been through all these paths? So are you on? I hope you're still talking to your parents and not you didn't disconnect from them, but that's good that you are respectful and all. But how? It's a very difficult balance to keep, and in our communities, because when you say no, it means, oh, that's it. I mean, you are disrespecting. It doesn't. You can't disagree and move on. And it's not with our parents only. It's a general culture that we are in sometimes. So anything you can say about that?
Absolutely. And I do want to clarify that my parents did not force me into anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful to them. And yes, I'm on good terms with them. I'm very grateful to everything that they've done. Mm-hmm. They're the reason why I'm here. Right. And
there, I would like to add another as a parent that they did their best as much as they knew from their
right,
perspective, because
absolutely.
they're also coming from, a very rich background. So
they're coming from a different country, different culture, and there are all these new challenges that are in when you move to a new country, especially a Western country that's so radically different. And I actually think that my generation is going to make similar mistakes because.
Thank you for watching or listening to Light Up Pichwa podcast with Javed Hashmi this week. This was part 1, episode 109 with him. If you want to know more what he has to say about his generation and other things, please tune in next week on Light Up Pichwa podcast, episode 109, part 2. You can find this podcast on YouTube, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Castbox, iHeartRadio. The page is also available on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. And I would appreciate if you can leave a comment or two and let me know what you think of this episode or any other episode. You can visit my website, lightuppichwa.com, and express your comments there as well. So stay tuned for next week. Take care.